For the young chef out there, what would be a first step that you would tell her or him to consider?
Find your mentor. Going into a business that you never operated yourself before, you can save yourself a lot of headache, trials and tribulations by just learning from people that's in the industry who've been through certain experiences that you haven't yet.
What's up, y'all? I'm Terrence J, and on this edition of Money Talks, we sit down with restaurateur, club owner, and serial entrepreneur Larry Morrow to talk about his hospitality empire in New Orleans. Larry, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. So tell us, how is the restaurant business going?
No, it's going great. It's always, it's always something, there's always fires to put out, but that's the business I'm in, putting out fires, but I love it. You got to really have a passion and really enjoy this industry to really be successful in it and just to want to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, the restaurant business, food and beverage, has surpassed $1 trillion, one of the biggest industries in the world. And you are at the forefront running things in the South. So how many restaurants do you have now?
So I currently have 5 restaurants, one of which is opening up this month, maybe like in 2 weeks. It's called Spicy Mango. It's the newest addition to Morrow Hospitality, but it's a New Orleans Caribbean fusion. So I have that plus 2 clubs. And right now we're looking at expansion, moving to Houston, Atlanta, even Miami. Miami's on our list, and New York initially, but that's where we're starting. But right now I'm focused on expanding while also improving our operations back home, just so that we can expand properly.
How did you get started in the restaurant business?
My mom, she's always been in the game, been a chef, and we collab. When I was 22, I opened up my first restaurant.
22?
My mom had an idea, and just started producing events, and I was making fast money. She had an idea and invested the money into it and called it Larry's Po' Boys and Wings. And it was just the wrong time in my life.
Yeah.
I was too young, wanted to be outside and be in the streets and not, be responsible, going to the grocery store and then just doing all the things that was required of that at the time. But we ultimately, after like 6 months, ended up closing. I even told people, I'm like, man, somebody bought the restaurant, because I was so embarrassed to see I had to close it. After we closed that, it taught me a greater lesson for later on when we opened up Morrow's in 2018, April of 2018. And it just taught me that you got to have reserves, because in this industry, you got to have, some pocket change, something in the bank, some reserve stash somewhere to make it through those slow months, because you're going to have them.
Yeah.
And it taught me I was just much more mature and at a different place, bigger brand. My finances looked a lot different. And so when we opened up Morrow's when I was 27 going on 28, it was just a different time for me. And it was a big hit. And so that kind of really launched everything. And I owe that to my mom. I got into the industry because of my mother.
Wow. So I want to unpack a few of the things that you talked about, especially when we discuss owning a business, growing a business from scratch. People have different views on working with family. And this entire journey that you've been on, your mom has been your biggest supporter and your head chef and your financier in the beginning to help you grow this empire. So what would be your advice to people that have questions about working with family members?
I would say you gotta have tough skin, because you will have differences, and sometimes it can affect your relationship with your family. And in the beginning, it did affect me and my mother's relationship. I'm your son, but when we go into this place of business that we both own, I'm no longer your son.
Yeah.
I'm your business partner. So the conversations we have to look different. And so I think it was just that, but also she's a strong woman. I'm a man.
Strong, yeah.
And so, when you got 2 people, like that, you'll butt heads, and you want it your way, I want it my way. And we have a lot of conflict about that. And it was pretty tough. I'm talking about times where, I think it almost messed up our relationships, but I think it made us a lot stronger in the end. She realized, like, what, my son I may have introduced him to the space, but he had a bigger vision.
He had a vision.
And so I started to open up more and more locations, and I'm not little Larry. I'm not just your baby boy no more. I'm
Not little Larry, but being coming out.
Yeah, I'm putting these ideas together. I'm putting a lot of my time and energy into it, just because I saw that Tillman Fertitta, you know, restaurateur, owns 600 plus restaurants. I'm like, damn, like, all right, I opened up one restaurant, I opened up Treehouse. Damn, let me see what it looked like to open up this and open up this. And when I identified that somebody owned 600 plus restaurants, I'm like, oh shit, it's possible to do so. That was enough clarity for me to say, you know what, let's take the next steps. And that's what I did. So, you know, just put my money where my mouth was and just started to make these investments.
But I mean, so many restaurants fail that first year. I think the statistic is somewhere around 30% of restaurants fail getting out the gates. You failed on that first run.
That first one,
You
it taught me a lot,
learned
yeah.
so many different lessons. How were you able to overcome the fear of getting back into it after you had those failures the first time?
Man, it's simple, man. You gotta surround yourself with the right people. You know, mentorship. I think mentorship was one of the things that helped me out with a lot of different things I've done in my life. That, but also just being a sponge and absorbing as much information about whatever industry you're in can help you avoid some of the hiccups, right? That a lot of restaurants go through. Of course, you're gonna, you know, encounter them, but it's just all about how you pivot. And I think even when the pandemic hit, you know, we just had to go to online, you know, use our social media following, use, you know, these to-go orders, and we were able to generate great revenue during the pandemic while keeping our overhead, you know, low because we didn't have all the staff and everything. So we were able to do well, and no, I think that's one of the things about us. We're able to pivot. You know, we have a strong team. It's growing, 500 plus employees. You know, a great, you know, my partner JC, you know, he's amazing. My mother, you know, we've been able to build a collective, and everybody put their energy to this bigger vision to create something enormous.
Yeah. Now, for the first couple years of the business, I know you said you began the new version in 2018. Were you in the red for some time before you were able to become profitable?
Honestly, I don't know if we were in the red or not, because 99% of restaurants that open up, they aren't familiar with, I mean, they're just not aware of what they're actually doing, right? You know, a lot of restaurants and people that, you know, I speak to, like, they don't have their P&Ls in order. They don't have their bookkeepers, their accountants, and the right team handling your finances. And, you know, you got to stick to what you're great at, right? You know, you can't be the finance manager. You can't be the chef, the front of house manager. You know, you can't, well, the delegate, you got to delegate, and you put somebody in those positions who specialize in those positions, because when it come time to have your paperwork in order, you want to have it structured properly, or you want to have everything organized. And I think we didn't know, you know, most people that got restaurants, they're making money, not knowing, you know, they see the money in the account going up, but not knowing that they could potentially profit an extra, you know, 5 to 10% by just controlling their labor and their food costs and their expenses more. So I think, you know, there's a science behind it. It's not just about what you make, it's about what you keep, right? And a lot of people just have to ensure that, you know, you got the right team in order, and bookkeeper. I think a bookkeeper is the first thing you should do when you decide to go into business, any business, but especially the restaurants, because it's so much, you know, so much going through the account. You want to be able to track every expense to know where you are with your percentages.
Prior to this interview, I sat down with a few burgeoning entrepreneurs that want to get into the restaurant field, and I just wanted to know their questions that they would have for you. One of the biggest questions is there an algorithm to how much money you invest in different aspects of the business? Like, how much do you put towards decor versus how much do you put towards staffing versus how much do you put towards ingredients? You know, if you're operating, let's say, off of $1 million bank loan, is there a specific split that you have to make things work, or is every single restaurant different and every formula different?
Every restaurant is different depending on, like, the particular, like, cuisine that you're selling. But I think, you know, whenever you want to keep your food costs, you know, at a certain percentage, depending on, just say if you're a steakhouse, or if you're, you know, just like a casual restaurant where, you know, your food costs may be anywhere from 27 to 30%. You know, it can be lower, you know, maybe a little bit lower, just depending on you're selling a lot of seafood or not. Our staffing, like, we try to keep our payroll at about 23%. That's front of the house, back of the house, and our management. You know, so it's just certain percentages, and it can be industry standard. Like, it varies depending on certain businesses, how large they come.
Your steakhouse, I'm assuming, has a different
The steakhouse, like, my goal for the steakhouse is to be about 33% food costs, and it ranges between 33 and 35. That's decent, but then there's some steakhouses where it may cost more. So that's when it comes to, like, pricing your menu properly, and just pricing everything just so that you can meet your margins, because it's a small margin, right? And you gotta, like, you know, every penny counts. So you just gotta make sure that you know, you know where you should be. And I know these things by like, if I don't have an answer, I may call Eugene with Catch Hospitality, or I may call Eugene Martin with A-Life. I may call, just a few different homies in the industry. Alex Smith with Atlas Restaurant Group. He owns like 50 restaurants from Baltimore, and got it going crazy.
So when you call somebody like Eugene, I mean, corner store is popping for him right now, obviously catching all of his different restaurants. What's a piece of advice that he's giving you?
Go. I think it was like something like, don't go wide, go high. No, go high, right? And don't spread yourself out too thin, right? Like you can build high. And so, I always call him. He always so receptive, and he may put me on an email with some of his family, with some of his team, and for any questions I have, or say, look, hop on our Zoom call. We're doing our corporate Zoom call with all his management from all over, or even went to the full extent of flying my team out to New York, and we sat over for 2 days, and he just walked us through a lot. And that's what it's about, paying it forward. And I think, because of that, I ensure that I do the same thing to other restaurateurs in the industry, because I'm so inspired when I go check out his locations, and a bunch of other friends' locations, to the point to where I know that if I can just get some guys from New Orleans or just restaurateur that's in the space, and you come see our operations, I'm impressed by it. Right? We've grown so much, so I'm sure it can inspire, that next generation, or just people who want to be in this industry. Because it does, it inspires me every time I walk into. Like we walked in the kitchen last night at dinner. And I never thought I'd love a kitchen so much. And I don't cook.
We went to the kitchen at Maple and and it reminds me of a kitchen that I saw in French Laundry, where they had just this open, beautiful concept. You can kind of walk in. So when you see other restaurants, it inspires you as well?
Yeah, because kitchens like that, man, they spend millions on their kitchen, and that's the goal. Like they keep their kitchen open. Right. You can see everything, but that says a lot. They like, that's how they handle everything. So
do you have a certain goalpost that you want to hit, as far as revenue per year, as far as amount of restaurants you want to open? Do you look at it in numbers like that, or is it just every single creative idea inspires the next?
I wouldn't say I look at it as like a number of restaurants I want to open, or a certain dollar amount that I want to reach. I know when I first started, like, I'm starting a hospitality group, I want to build this $100 million company. That was like day one, right? I'm like, I built a $100 million company. That's like, but that was the goal. It wasn't, it's no longer the goal, because you start to work hard and you start to see that what's attainable and what's not. Prior to then, I didn't know what was possible. But after being in the industry for some years now, and just seeing what's possible, and that direction that we're going, it's not, the goal isn't $100 million, to create a $100 million company. It became less about the money and more about the impact. And, of course, I want to challenge myself to see how far we can take it. We want to be, a $1 billion company, right? Like I always say, if you ask me today what number that I want my company someday to be a value, that just say probably $1 billion, is because you see when you're in it, and you're grinding, and you popping up these locations like we're opening, 100 million, the thought of it was like, wow, like it's so far away, but no, it's not that far away. So it's not, it's more so about the impact, it's about the legacy, about creating something for my family, inspiring people through the process. There's not enough people in Black hospitality, right? It's not enough. And I think it's a great business. And when you go to a food city like New Orleans that's food driven, it's not enough Black-owned restaurants, right? And so, like, that's a problem. I think there should be more, and not just in New Orleans, throughout the country. And a lot of people that who are my mentors, they don't look like me, and which is fine. But I want to see more people in Black hospitality. We got to start owning those buildings and open up those restaurants and taking those chances.
And when you talk about hospitality, it's not just limited to what you're doing with your restaurants in the kitchen. You also have nightclubs and different ventures as well. How are you able to transition into those lanes, or is it a seamless one?
It's a seamless one, because at one point I was trying to renovate homes. I was trying to open up this business, and I had a moment where I'm saying, you know what? Let me stop focusing on all this extra stuff, because it's like in one day I had to switch so many different hats. I'm trying to be a designer, I'm trying to be a contractor, I'm trying to be restaurateur, promoter, and making these other investments. But I think when I say, you know what, let me fall back, let me focus on what I'm focusing on. Let me focus on the restaurants and the nightlife. Both of them are industries where
Cousins.
yeah, I mean, yeah, they're cousins. So it's like, I would bring people to host my events, bring them to the restaurants. And prior to me producing events, we knew each other and we were producing events before I had Morrows. But I think it made the perfect sense because I was producing these events and I was, my goal was to just provide the best hospitality possible when people come in town. When we open up Morrows, it's like, all right, cool. Not only can I bring you to the nightclub, but I can bring you to and show you a good time at Morrows. Yeah. That's dope when people want to travel to a city to experience what you're providing. Not just one location, but 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, absolutely. You provided a culture,
right?
You provided, high level hospitality that makes people want to come back.
And culture is the key word.
Culture is the key word.
Culture is influence.
How do you create culture? Is it meeting with your staff? Is it meeting with the chefs? Is it, leading from the top?
And I wouldn't just say culture just within Morrow Hospitality, even outside of Morrow Hospitality, right? I think culture in general is just something that like, it's a way of life. Right? It's not something that you're trying to be. It's something that it's who you are. Yeah. We're not just selling food. We're selling an experience. We're selling culture. You're selling a feeling. A lot of what I do, Sun Chung, it was an emotional thing because I got to learn so much more about my grandmother. This was like my love letter to her.
Yeah.
To honor her way from Korea to America and, building a foundation for her family to stand on. So it's just telling a story. And I think, we're not just selling food. You can get good food a lot of places, but it's selling an experience. It's selling emotions, a brand, just a lot of things. The one is selling culture. When I open up a restaurant, I'm not just trying to find any name. You got Morrows on the building. That's my last name. That's the legacy.
Yeah.
You got my grandmother name on the building. Monday was something that like a name that we were trying to come up with, and it felt so good. I wrote down a bunch of names, and I look forward to Mondays.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Monday is like, how people dread Monday.
Get it.
We wanted to change the perception of what people thought about Monday, right? Make it a fun, great atmosphere where people come, like see their logo as a smiley face, and it's just vibrant and feel good. It just make you want to look forward to Mondays. So everything is done with intention and with a feeling, and not just to go make some money.
Yeah. I've done a lot of different things in my career. I remember when I would wake up and I could only think about music. And it was great, doing things in the music space, music shows. And then at a certain point, I was just about film. I just loved everything about film. And I just put my whole focus on film. And then I woke up one day and all I care about is business. I just love business. And that's why I decided to do this show. And I believe that it's always important to, continuously grow, continuously challenge yourself, continuously have new things that you're ambitious about. And right now you're ambitious, as we can all see, about your new concept, Spicy Mango.
Spicy Mango.
So tell us a little bit about that concept and what inspired you to go after that now.
And it's crazy. I come up with these names a lot of times that people are like, but a name don't sound right until you create the branding and create the vibe and the experience. And, it may sound like, at first people were like Sun Chung. Sun Chung, it just wasn't ringing.
Yeah.
But, now it's like, everybody's like going to stay there. And so with a name, it's like, why Spicy Mango? Why Spicy Mango? It just felt right. I don't know. It's just like I wanted to create something that was Caribbean, New Orleans Caribbean infused.
Okay.
But, give me the vibe I get when I go to Tulum, when I go to Taboo, I'll go to Rosa Negra, a bunch of these different restaurants over there. When I would just come with a name, I want to create something that we own. We own our IP. Yeah. We own we own the intellectual property. Yeah. And not something that's generic. I always create a list, and people like Spicy Mango, they wasn't really feeling it, but now it makes sense.
How important is the branding aspect of your restaurant business?
I think it's big because essentially, like, IP is a form of real estate, right? Yeah. When I look at a business, I don't look at a business as a way just to make money. All right. When I come up with a name, it's like, can we scale this business? If it's not scalable, it's not sellable.
Yep.
And so that's how I look at things. I go into it like, all right, cool. I'm not gonna open up this just to make a few dollars. If I open it, I'm gonna open it up with an intention to scale the business, to maybe sell it, right? Or to just maybe add it to the portfolio or hold on to it.
Yeah.
I was talking to a homie named Alex Smith, who owned Atlas Group, and he was like, man, I see what you're doing. He was like, you're not building, you don't have to own 50 restaurants to sell for whatever number it is you want, or to do whatever it is you want.
Yeah.
He said, I see what you're building. You're building IP, you're building intellectual property. What you've built and the reputation and that last name, IP, is just growing just because I'm watching everything you're doing. When people can speak about you, speak about what you do, the businesses that you have, you know, I was rolling out the carpet. I'm talking about you come in town, I'm rolling out the carpet, and from that, relationships with them. Yeah, 'cause I saw early on that from booking people, I was able to build organic relationships just by showing people a great time.
You got to step into it, and that's it.
Man, listen, when you see me, this is like what you're seeing is me reaping the benefits of the seeds that were planted 10 years ago.
Yeah. What do you look for in staffing as you look to hire these different positions? Even when you look at different, you know, executive chefs to run your restaurants, hospitality, for our young people out there that are wanting to get into the business, what are some of the resume qualities that you look for in hiring and in potential talent?
I think someone who is passionate, you know what I mean? Because you can't teach that.
You can't fake that.
Yeah, you can't teach that. So if you're gonna be in this industry and if you don't love it, you're already in hospitality, so you gotta show up a certain way. You gotta be hospitable. I mean, we're just looking for creatives, right? Yeah. If you're a chef, you know, have some creativity, have, you know, be passionate about what you're doing. If you're a server, you know, have a certain level of hospitality, passion behind what you're doing, because, you know, a server can make great money. It's not easy building restaurants. It's one of the #1 family businesses. Focus on what you got in front of you.
Yeah.
You know, don't try to focus on everything that's around you. I tell my homie all the time, I'm like, yo, he got great ideas. And I'm like, man, listen, stop. Focus on this.
Last question. When did you fall in love with money?
Shit, I think when I was 1 day old. It's not even the money that you fall in love with. It's just the things that you can do with it, right? And of course you need the money, but yeah, man, it's, man, I don't know. My first job was when I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wanted to go get my own paper. You know, I was working at McDonald's. So I think at a very, very early age, even before then, because I used to, birthday money I used to save my money, have stashes in my drawers. So I just think I just always knew what I wanted. I wanted to have money to be able to live comfortably, take care of my family. And I would say, man, shit, day one, you know, day one, man. But just more in love with what, you know, the things you can do and the people you can help with. Yeah, man, day one for sure.
And me and Larry grabbed dinner last night. Larry paid for the bill last night, so of course I credit you for that.
I appreciate you.
I always appreciate you, man. Money shows opportunity. Absolutely, money talk. Happy to do a deep dive and explore some of this business stuff you've been on, and really proud of you, man. Continued success, brother.
I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, my bro.